Imagine being accused of a crime so serious that it could send you to prison for life. And now, someone from your own circle is exposing evidence that could change everything. Boosie just dropped a warning to Charleston White about a 2005 murder-for-hire case, and the stakes couldn't be higher. What happens next could shock you, and it's something you won't want to miss. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're diving deep into a story that has the internet buzzing and could have life-altering consequences. Boosie, one of hip-hop's most outspoken figures, has issued a serious warning to Charleston White regarding shocking evidence tied to a 2005 murder-for-hire case. You won't believe the details that are now coming to light. In this video, we're uncovering verified facts, insider revelations, and context you probably haven't heard anywhere else. From chilling claims to possible legal consequences, this story raises questions about loyalty, street politics, and the high stakes of past actions finally catching up. By the end of this video, you'll understand why Boosie felt compelled to speak out, what Charleston White is facing, and why this case could have repercussions for years to come. Stay tuned, because the truth behind this warning is even more intense than it first appears. And trust me, the story doesn't just stop there. There's a part coming up that will completely change the way you see this entire situation. In recent weeks, the online world has been set ablaze after Boosie, the Louisiana rapper known for speaking his mind, directly warned Charleston White about something chilling. Evidence connected to a murder-for-hire case dating back to 2005. For those unfamiliar, Charleston White is a social media personality with a controversial reputation, often diving into hot-button topics and street-level issues. Boosie's warning wasn't just casual commentary. He claimed that the evidence he was referencing could carry life-altering consequences, potentially a life sentence. This isn't just another online beef or drama. It's a real-world situation with legal ramifications. Fans and followers immediately began dissecting every clip, post, and comment to understand the gravity of the situation. But here's where it gets interesting. Boosie didn't just drop a vague warning. His message implied that this wasn't something from hearsay or rumors. It was tangible, documented, and serious enough that Charleston White couldn't just dismiss it. People began asking, what exactly happened in 2005? Who was involved? And why is it only surfacing now, nearly 2 decades later? Some insiders suggest that the timing of Boosie's warning isn't accidental. In the world of street politics and music industry rivalries, the release of sensitive information can be strategic. Whether it's to send a message, protect someone, or shift the narrative, the warning itself raises more questions than it answers. As we dig deeper in the next section, we'll explore the events surrounding the original 2005 case, the key players involved, and why this evidence has suddenly become a topic of public discussion. But before we get there, think about this. What would you do if something from your past suddenly resurfaced in a way that could change your entire future? To understand why Boosie's warning to Charleston White is making headlines, we need to go back to 2005, a year that marked a dark and chaotic chapter in the Southern hip-hop scene. During that time, street violence and industry rivalries often blurred together, and many rising artists were surrounded by dangerous influences. It was in that environment that this alleged murder-for-hire plot reportedly took place. The case, according to whispers that have recently resurfaced, involved a planned hit connected to a long-standing dispute. While not all details were ever made public, certain reports suggest that the case involved individuals from Louisiana and Texas, 2 regions Boosie and Charleston White both have deep ties to. What makes this story even more disturbing is that some people claim Charleston White himself might have had knowledge of, or involvement in, events linked to that crime. Back in the mid-2000s, records indicate there were multiple unsolved murders tied to street-level feuds. Law enforcement at the time didn't have social media evidence or digital footprints to track suspects. But now, in 2025, things are different. With new digital tools and the resurfacing of old files, investigators can easily revisit cold cases. And this is where the story takes a chilling turn. When Boosie made his public statement, it wasn't just idle talk. He mentioned receipts, a word that in today's online culture translates to proof. That proof, some sources claim, could include phone records, conversations, and even statements from people who were around at the time. If any of that information ends up being real, it could open a Pandora's box of legal trouble for everyone involved. For Charleston White, this situation hits even harder because of his public image. He's known for calling out rappers, activists, and street figures, often mocking or exposing people he believes are living double lives. But now, the tables may have turned. Many of his critics are pointing out the irony. A man who exposes others might now be facing exposure himself. And here's where the tension escalates. Boosie's warning wasn't delivered quietly or privately. It was loud, public, and deliberate. That choice alone sent shockwaves through both fan communities. Why would Boosie choose to make something this serious so public unless he wanted to send a clear message? Some say it's a warning for Charleston to tread carefully. Others think it's Boosie's way of distancing himself from something that might come to light soon. The public reaction has been explosive. Fans are split between those defending Boosie for standing his ground and others accusing him of stirring up unnecessary drama. Meanwhile, Charleston White hasn't stayed silent. He's fired back with his usual boldness, calling Boosie's claims nonsense and suggesting that he's being targeted by people who fear the truth he speaks. But beneath all the social media noise, one question remains: could there really be evidence from 2005 strong enough to bring a life sentence today? In the next section, we'll explore the trail of evidence Boosie hinted at and how that evidence could reopen old wounds and new legal battles. Because if what's being whispered behind the scenes is true, this story might be far from over. When Boosie publicly mentioned a 2005 murder-for-hire case and hinted at real evidence, the internet went into detective mode. People started combing through old interviews, podcasts, and archived social media clips to find any clue that could back up or disprove the claim. And the deeper people dug, the stranger things became. According to several reports circulating online, Boosie referenced paperwork, a word that, in street culture, often means legal documents or evidence tying someone to a crime. He didn't say exactly what kind of paperwork it was, but the tone in his warning suggested it wasn't something that could easily be brushed off. When a rapper with Boosie's background, someone who's faced serious charges himself, uses that term, it carries weight. Let's not forget, Boosie has had his own history with the justice system. In the early 2000s, he faced a capital murder charge that nearly ended his career and his life. After spending years behind bars and being acquitted, Boosie came out of that experience understanding exactly what it means to face a potential life sentence. So when he warns someone else about evidence, he's speaking from experience, not speculation. Some online insiders claim that the evidence in question could involve witness statements, cell phone transcripts, or even old police files that were never fully investigated. A few have suggested that new technology, like digital forensic reconstruction, could now reveal data that was impossible to track back in 2005. Imagine being implicated by evidence that's been sitting untouched for 20 years, until now. This possibility alone has stirred fear and fascination across the internet. Podcasts, blogs, and YouTube channels have all begun to discuss what might happen if this alleged evidence is real. Legal experts have also chimed in, explaining that while old cases can be reopened, the burden of proof remains extremely high. But that hasn't stopped the speculation. One key question everyone keeps asking is, why now? Why is this case suddenly resurfacing after so long? Some say Boosie's motivation was to expose hypocrisy, to show that those who preach accountability must face it themselves. Others believe it's a preemptive move, a way to protect himself if someone close to him starts talking to authorities or leaking information. Then there's Charleston White's reaction. Instead of backing down, he doubled down, going live, laughing off the claims, and accusing Boosie of trying to bring up old lies to stay relevant. But even in his defiant tone, some viewers noticed cracks. His voice, usually full of confidence, seemed slightly uneasy when discussing that specific year, 2005. It's a subtle shift, but one that caught people's attention. As the story continues to unfold, a few disturbing allegations have surfaced. Some say that there are names of other individuals tied to this supposed case, people who were never charged but were part of the same environment. If that's true, this wouldn't just be about Charleston White. It could expose a whole network of connections stretching back 2 decades. And that's where things get even more complicated. In today's digital world, it doesn't take much for something to go viral and force law enforcement to take notice. If enough people start demanding answers, old files could be reopened, and investigators might feel pressure to revisit the case. This is why Boosie's warning carries such heavy implications. It's not just about a public feud or a social media argument. It's about potential legal consequences that could reshape the narrative around both men. But we're not done yet. In the next section, we'll take a closer look at Charleston White's background, how his rise to online fame, his polarizing personality, and his controversial takes might have contributed to the situation he's in now. Because to truly understand the tension between these two men, we have to understand who Charleston White really is and why his words have made him one of the most divisive figures in hip-hop commentary today. To understand the full weight of Boosie's warning and the seriousness of this 2005 case resurfacing, we have to talk about Charleston White, one of the most polarizing public figures of the last decade. His story is one of transformation, controversy, and contradiction. Depending on who you ask, Charleston White is either a reformed activist exposing the dark side of street life or a provocateur who thrives on disrespecting people to stay relevant. Before he became a YouTube personality and social media commentator, Charleston White had already lived a lifetime of experiences that shaped his worldview. In his younger years, he was deeply involved in gang life in Texas. He's been open about his criminal past, admitting that he was part of violent crimes as a teenager and even spent time in juvenile detention. But after serving his sentence, he claimed he turned his life around, studying the law, working with at-risk youth, and preaching redemption to the next generation. For a while, that story earned him respect. People admired his transparency and saw him as a living example of someone who broke free from the cycle of crime and violence. But then came the turning point, the shift that would redefine Charleston White's public image forever. When he started using social media to speak his mind, Charleston White quickly gained attention for saying what others wouldn't. He began calling out rappers, activists, and street figures by name, accusing them of hypocrisy and glorifying the same violence that destroys communities. He became known for his blunt, raw delivery, a style that mixed truth with shock value. The more controversial he became, the more his audience grew. Clips of him mocking dead rappers or insulting entire fan bases spread across the internet, sparking outrage and fascination in equal measure. To many, he was fearless, unafraid to say what needed to be said, but to others, he was reckless, crossing moral lines just for attention. And that's where Boosie comes in. Boosie, who's lived through real violence, jail time, and loss, saw Charleston White's comments as disrespectful to the culture and to the pain many people in the streets have endured. Over the past couple of years, the two have taken subtle, and sometimes direct, shots at each other online. What began as differences in philosophy eventually turned into something more personal. Charleston often taunted rappers for their criminal pasts, their lyrics, and their contradictions. But when Boosie fired back, it wasn't with empty words. It was with a warning tied to something from the past that could actually carry legal consequences. That's what makes this situation so volatile. It's not just internet talk. It's personal history colliding with potential real-world fallout. And while Charleston White often claims that he's protected by his cooperation with law enforcement, proudly calling himself a truth teller who exposes crime, that label can be dangerous. In street culture, being associated with the police, even as a supposed activist, can put someone in complicated situations. So when Boosie brought up the idea of evidence and paperwork, it struck a nerve. People who follow Charleston's story closely say this moment was inevitable. His boldness has always been his greatest strength and his biggest weakness. He thrives on controversy, but when controversy involves something that could land someone in prison for life, the game changes completely. And here's something worth noting. Charleston White's growing fame has also brought renewed attention to his past. Old interviews, former associates, and people who once knew him have started speaking out, sharing their own versions of what happened back in the day. Some say he's telling the truth about his reformation. Others insist he's been hiding certain details. And those details might connect directly to the very case Boosie just referenced. If that's true, Boosie's warning wasn't just a random threat, it was a signal. A reminder that the past never truly dies, and that in the world both of them come from, every secret eventually surfaces. But that leads to a deeper question. Is this really about a case from 2005, or is it about control? Control of the narrative, control of reputation, and control of public power. Because in today's age of viral media, your story is your currency. And both Boosie and Charleston White understand that better than anyone.